Hey everybody, it is Dak here from the Ed Boys, and welcome to my Giants Foundry guide. Giants Foundry was added a couple weeks back as a new method to train your smithing level by making swords for giants. The main benefit from this activity is that you can get a lot of smithing XP without having to use as many bars as traditional smithing, and it's a little bit more engaging than Blast Furnace, which is kind of just a lap simulator. Real quick everyone, if you are enjoying the videos lately, or you've just been getting some useful information out of them, be sure to like the video and click that subscribe button. I do appreciate all of your support everybody, as it goes a long way for the channel. Thank you very much. You will need to complete the Sleeping Giants quest to start using the Giants Foundry, but it's barely even a quest. It takes like 10 minutes, and the quest is going to give you a basic rundown on how the Giants Foundry works. It's just like a tutorial for the minigame. You only need 15 smithing to start the Giants Foundry. That's the same smithing requirement as the Sleeping Giants quest, but using higher tier bars will require higher smithing. Higher tier bars will lead to better XP per hour and more reward points. Alright, let's talk about actually making a sword, in other words, completing a commission. Like I said, the Sleeping Giants quest is going to teach you the basics of this, but there's some important details that they definitely missed out on in the quest. First of all, grab a commission from Kovac. He's going to give you a combination of specs that he wants for the sword, like broad and heavy. Once you have a commission, you have to set up the mold to best fit that description. There are three parts to the mold: the forte, the blade, and the tip. It doesn't matter if you balance the two attributes, like heavy and broad, you just have to get the highest total between them. Here is a table from the wiki that shows you the best mold options for each combination of specs that Kovac can give you. You don't have access to a lot of these molds as you get started. A lot of these molds are in the rewards shop, which you can buy to help out with your sword making. They're pretty cheap to buy, so you can unlock a new mold every like 2 to 4 swords depending on what metal you're using. I'm going to talk about that even more in the rewards section of the guide. I have linked to the wiki's page to this table in the description if you want to actually use the sorting buttons to help yourself out. I've used the table a few times early on, but legit, you can just eyeball the molds for the biggest bonuses real quick and be in and out of that mold in just a few seconds. Now that the mold is set, you have to put some metal in the Crucible, 28 bars worth. It doesn't just have to be bars. Anything that can be made at an anvil with bars can then be melted down into the Crucible. You just don't get the full bar value out of it. So if you put a steel plate body in the Crucible, it's going to count as 4 bars, not 5. For Iron Men, it is kind of nice though that you can get XP for your bars 2 different times. You can smith them into armor, then you can use that armor at the Giants Foundry. You do not want to use just one type of metal on your sword though. An alloy sword, or in other words a sword using 2 different kinds of metal, is going to get you a better score. Let's take a look at another table to show you this. As you can see, if you only put steel into the Crucible, the score is going to be 30, but if you use 14 iron bars and then 14 steel bars, you actually get a score of 40, and you're spending less money than you did if you did 28 steel bars. It's also slightly more efficient to use like 8 or 9 of the higher tier bar and then like 19 to 20 of that lower tier bar. That's just for getting more XP out of your bars. If you want the most reward points per hour, you should stick to 14 of each type. It is worth mentioning, the higher tier bar that you use, the more sections of progress you're going to have on your progress bars. We're starting to talk more about actually making the sword. We're going to move on from which bars you use. Your Crucible is full, pour it into the mold, and go pick up your preform. You do need to use a bucket of water on it before picking it up, or you can just wear ice gloves. Once you have the preform, you're going to see all of these progress bars. The top bar just shows your quality. Quality is based on which bars that you used making this preform, and then what molds you used. Once you get to this point in the run, you're not going to be able to raise the quality anymore, but it will go down if you use the wrong tools, or you use the right tools in the wrong temperature. The middle bar shows the current temperature of the sword. The sword is always slowly cooling down on its own, very slowly, but it is worth paying attention to that auto cool. You can manually cool down the sword by taking it to the waterfall. Left clicking it is just going to cool it down slowly, but you can right click quench to speed up the cooling process. You can also heat the sword back up by using the lava pool down here. Again, you can left click on the lava pool to slowly heat it up, or you can right click dunk to heat it up faster. Finally, the bottom bar shows progress, and each section of the bar shows you what tool you're supposed to use to make more progress on it. The red section of the progress bar requires the trip hammer to make any progress, and the temperature of the sword needs to be in the red zone when the hammer hits, or you will lose some quality. The yellow section of the progress bar is the grindstone, and the sword needs to be in the yellow temperature section for this tool. And then finally, the green section is going to be the polishing stone, and as expected, you need your sword to be in that green temperature zone when you use the polishing stone, otherwise it's going to lose a little bit of quality. One more thing to know before we go over a full sword run here. When the user interface highlights yellow like this, you just want to click on the tool that you are already using, as long as the progress bar still states that you need to be using that tool. When this is done successfully, you are going to get a nice boost for progress on the sword. Usually I refer to this as the yellow box. The sword always starts with having to use the trip hammer. The first section is always going to be the red one. Higher tier sword, you are going to have to cool it down real quick to get it into the red. Anytime you're about to use the trip hammer, you want to be on the hot end of the red zone. In other words, the right side of that red part in the temperature gauge, since using the trip hammer also cools down the sword. This is the same for the polishing wheel. You want to get the sword to the hot part of green, or the right side of it, but then the grindstone, that's going to heat up your sword while you use it, so you want to set up the sword to be on the left side of the yellow temperature. You'll notice I ran away from the waterfall right before the temperature got in the red zone, but the auto cool got it there before I actually got to the trip hammer. If that wasn't the case, then I would have stood in front of the trip hammer for a second and let the auto cool do its job first. So you're not going to be able to get all the way through one segment of the progress bar without having to reheat or cool down, unless you get the yellow box like I just did. See, as I was running away, I was able to get back to click on that tool, and I did get a nice boost in progress. So we already get to cool down to the green zone. Like I was saying before, you want to be on the right side of the green zone, since the polishing wheel is going to cool down your weapons. So we narrow it down to right there, head over to the polishing wheel, and we're kind of hoping for a yellow box in this one too, because you most definitely will have to reheat the sword, and there's the yellow box. Beautiful. So there's going to be no need to reheat the sword during this green segment, but we now are in the yellow segment of the progress bar, so I'm going to have to heat it up anyway to get ready for the grindstone. Like I was saying before, you want to be on the cool end of yellow, that way you can use a lot of the grindstone, because the grindstone is going to be heating the sword up. Same situation as before. I'm not going to get all the way through this yellow bar unless I were to get a yellow box during this segment, so I'm likely going to have to go cool the sword down. Would you look at that? Already another yellow box. I had to hustle bust to cool down anyway, because we are now in the green segment. So at the moment, I have had 3 yellow boxes. You are limited to the amount of UI highlights that you can get. It's been 2 or 3. I noticed, I think it was anything that you're using mithril and up for your sword, you're going to get 3 UI highlights, but if you're using steel and lower for your sword, you only get 2 of those yellow boxes. So I've already had 3 yellow boxes. I'm certain we're not getting another one. I'm going to go over and dunk my sword. You'll notice that I ran to dunk the sword while I still could have done like 1 more progress at the polishing wheel. That's good practice if you still have a chance for a yellow box. If you get the yellow box highlight right as the sword gets out of the temperature zone that you need it to be in, then you just kind of waste one of them. Technically at this point, I don't have to worry about that though. I've already had 3 yellow boxes during this sword, so I'm just going to heat this all the way up to the right end of red. It really does not matter that much to narrow it down. In fact, I actually went too hot. As you can see though, it is very quick to fix that mistake. If you go too hard, you just whoop, 1 quench, and we're good to go. We actually narrowed it down pretty well. We're really on the right side of that red bar, but it's not going to matter that much anyway. Even with the Smith's uniform, you very rarely get through a full segment of the progress bar in just 1 go at it. You usually have to reheat your sword or cool down the sword if you're using the grindstone. So after this one, I'll probably just head back. We can get 1 more though. Head on back. We're going to have to heat it up like 1 time. We'll get 2, and then maybe just 1 hit is going to send us to the grindstone. It is. So I want to cool it down to the left side of the yellow, because it is going to be heating up while we use the grindstone. And then it's the same process as before. I will probably have to cool down the sword, because there's no way we're getting that yellow box. We have already gotten 3 of them. And now we have the trip hammer for the last segment. Just got to heat this up. And again, very likely we will have to heat it up during the trip hammer segment. Even with the Smith's outfit. Oop, get out of here, Jekyll. Even with the Smith's uniform, I don't know. The Smith's uniform is pretty underwhelming. You don't get that much extra progress out of it. It may be really only the yellow boxes. Maybe I'm just misunderstanding exactly how the Smith's uniform helps. But as you can see, we're still going to get a little bit too cold of a sword before we actually finish. It's actually going to be very close on this one, but this hit right here will probably bring it out of the zone. It's really close. I'm going to run away. Yeah, as you can see there, actually, that's a good example. It just auto-cooled into to being too cold before that trip hammer hit. So you want to be careful with that one, by the way. Quickly, let's see what time I got on this. 5:54 for the quality. That is because I stood around at the mold for a little bit for editing purposes to be able to freeze and show you guys what I was talking about with the mold. A fine time. I'm okay with that. Let's go make another sword. Alright, let's break down the gains that you can make from this new smithing method. Mostly we're going to be talking about XP rates here, but we will also discuss the costs and how many reward points you can get. The lower tier swords are made a lot faster since they have less segments in the progress bar. They still add up to much less XP per hour, but it really isn't that bad for a low level. If you're making iron and bronze swords, you can get up to 20 swords an hour when you're really cruising, but honestly 17 or 18 is probably more reasonable. The XP per sword does increase depending on your quality, which is not just affected by the bronze and iron bars, but it's also also going to be affected by which molds you use. As you get further into the Giant's Foundry, you're going to unlock better molds from the shop, and the Smith's uniform you can unlock from the shop. It also helps a very small amount. In other words, the minigame will get more efficient as it goes, so your first few hours you won't land on the maximum rates. You get like 2.5k per sword on these low tiers, which would be about 50k XP an hour. Also, making 20 swords would require 280 bronze bars and 280 iron bars. Right when you turn the sword in for that big XP drop, you can get about 2 times as many coins as you got XP, so you'll actually get a little bit under 100k GP an hour in cash from this XP right here. You're not going to be profiting, but it does give you some of your money back. With the iron and steel alloy, you can get up to 17 swords an hour and more like 5k XP per sword. Again, this would be like maximum pace. Maybe 14 or 15 swords right out the gate is a little bit more reasonable, or even less if you're messing it up a lot. This would make for up to 85k XP an hour in smithing, which is like 170k-ish in cash per hour. You're actually using 238 steel and iron bars, which cost a little bit less than 170k at the moment, so you do profit slightly with the iron and steel alloy, but it's really more like breaking even. With the steel and mithril alloy, you can still get up to 15 swords an hour when you're cruising at about 9k XP per sword. As long as you're not messing up the quality, this is going to be about 135k XP an hour with a little bit less than 270k in cash, and you're going to use 210 myth bars and steel bars each hour. Of course, you may not be using bars, you might have to convert from like plate bodies. Moving up the ladder to myth and adamant alloy, you can squeeze out like 12 to 13 swords an hour at about 15k XP per sword, which would be 180 to 195k smithing XP an hour. This is starting to get pretty solid. That's like 350, maybe 400k cash back per hour, and you're going to use 182 myth and addy bars. Finally, the rune and adamant alloy. With the 2 highest tier bars, you can max out at 12 swords an hour when you're moving very quickly. It's more like 10 to 12 swords an hour because there is a little bit of time between each sword. And one thing that can really speed things up is as you get used to setting the mold very quickly. It should land at about 23k XP per sword when you have the best molds, and as long as you don't mess up the quality while you're making it, you're going to get like 250 to 275k smithing XP an hour. Unfortunately, rune is very expensive, so you're going to lose a lot of money with these ones. I'm talking like 6 to 7 GP per XP. That would mean 85 to 99 smithing would cost you anywhere from 58 to 68 mil and require 36 to 37 hours to train. If you instead did the steel and iron bars for 85 to 99 smithing, it would pretty much break even rather, but it would also take 115 hours to finish. So it's worth noting that if you spent the extra 68 mil for the higher tier bars, you're going to save 78 hours of smithing training. That means in those 78 hours, you can now do something else. You would have to make 870k GP an hour to make up for the extra 68 mil you spent. So if you have a moneymaker that'll make more than 1 mil per hour, it actually is worth spending your money on these higher tier bars to train your smithing, I would say. The amount of reward points that you get is dependent on the sword's quality. An Addy and Rune sword can get all the way up to 199 quality, which does give 199 points in the reward shop. And then the worst swords, you're going to land less than half of that, maybe like 70 to 80 points per sword, depending on the molds that you have unlocked. So with that and any other variables in mind, like messing up your quality while you're running the swords, you can land anywhere from 1,000 to 1,500 points per hour with the low tier swords, and more like 1,900 to 2,400 points per hour with the high tier swords. So everyone of the XP, the GP, or even the reward point rates that I have mentioned here is drastically going to drop if you're messing the sword up a lot during the process. It is important to try to always turn in that maximum sword quality. It is pretty obvious, but it will make a very big difference over time. Alright, let's finally talk about the rewards shop where you can spend your reward points. The first things that you should buy are the molds. They will increase your average quality per sword by quite a bit. If you're not getting anywhere near the XP rates that you think you should get and you don't quite have all the molds, this is the first place you should look. It's worth noting, if we bring back up the table that shows the best molds for each sword type, there are 2 molds that are not on this table, the Juggernaut Forte and the Corrupted Point. You do not have to buy these 2 molds. There's not one combination where they're required, so you can save some points. The Smith's uniform is actually a pretty cool outfit, though it's pretty underwhelming at the Giant's Foundry. Each piece gives a 20% chance to increase your progress that you make within the minigame, but if you get all 4 pieces, it does boost it to 100%. You also get a 20% chance to smith an item 1 tick faster at an anvil, and again, that's 100% with the whole outfit. 1 tick per item doesn't seem like much, but if you were smithing with like thousands of bars, that is going to be a lot of time saved. The full outfit is 15,000 reward points. For 2,000 points, you can get a double ammo mold, which smelts 2 bars at a time while you make cannonballs. I gotta say, I am in love with this reward, I won't lie to you. The Colossal Blade is an interesting weapon that gets stronger against bigger monsters. I have not had a chance yet to mess around with it, but I do want to check it out. As far as I know, it's not going to be like best in slot anywhere important, but apparently it can hit pretty hard even in PvP. Kovacs Grog can be purchased for 300 points. It's going to give you a +4 temporary boost in smithing, which is more convenient than Stu's, but still not quite that potential +5. The smithing catalyst is pretty cool on paper. When you're making bars just out of regular furnace, it's going to cut the coal requirement in half the same way that blast furnace does. It doesn't reduce the coal needed at the blast furnace though. You do need to use 1 catalyst per bar, and it pretty much just makes the smithing bars at a regular furnace an AFK version of the blast furnace. You still make more bars per hour if you actually run laps at the blast furnace though. Finally, the ore pack. It's just like a bag of gems, but instead with ores. You get mostly coal, but you can get some rune ore out of these, which does bring the profit up ever so slightly. That is about it for my Giants Foundry guide, everybody. If you enjoyed the guide or you just got some useful information out of it, be sure to like and subscribe for more content. I do have an hour of Giants Foundry video that I did early on, and I plan on putting out 1 more of those videos since I now have the Smith's uniform. Plus, they have updated the Foundry a little bit since that first hour came out, and I'll wait like another week or so to see if they make any more tweaks before I get that second hour out. Those are linked in the description. Thank you very much for watching, everyone. I do stream on Twitch. If you've been enjoying the videos, it should be linked on the screen and in the description. I am also on Twitter and have a Discord, which are linked in the description. Thanks again for watching, and best of luck on your smithing grind.